So this past Friday, Manchester City was officially banned by the UEFA from any European competitions for these next two seasons, not including this one. And they are also fined 30 million euros. 30 million euros. That is a lot of money, of course. I mean, when you talk about millions, it's a lot of money. It's really just a lot of money. But I feel like not a lot of people really understand why Manchester City has been banned from playing Champions League or, worst case scenario, Europa League. To understand why they will not be eligible to play, at least before this appeal, why they're not eligible to play these next few seasons, I feel like we all have to understand what the financial fair play is. The UEFA financial fair play regulations are really just a set of rules for teams in Europe so they don't spend more money than what they make from their transfers. So let's just say, for example, I don't know, Real Madrid. They make 50 million euros in transfers and they spend 50 million euros on a player. Well, then that's good. On a player, both the transfer and the wages for the year or for the season. They spend that much money. Then they break even and it's good in UEFA's eyes. But UEFA does give you a bit of a leeway, a 5 million euro leeway. So let's say, for example, you make 50 million euros, but instead of spending those 50, you spend 55, then it's still okay. What would happen now, let me rephrase this. The only way that you would be on bad terms with UEFA is if you make 50 million euros, for example, and you spend 75, and you can't justify how you got that extra money to pay for this player's transfer and for his wages. And that's what happened to Manchester City. They spent way more than what they officially made. And that's really just a very, very, very basic of what the UEFA financial fair play is. It's just a very, very basic. But enough, I think, to get us on the same page. At least we know what we're talking about. City is not a first-time offender. They were punished in 2014. They were punished in 2014 by the UEFA for the same thing, but the punishment wasn't a ban or a fine. Their squad for every Champions League game was reduced to 21 players. So instead of 23, it was 21. 21 eligible players for game day. Which, in hindsight, it's like, okay, I mean, whatever. But when you're there, you never know if an injury can occur or something like that. So that's what had happened to Manchester City back in 2014. They were punished in a much less severe way than they were this past week. So many of you may be asking yourselves, well, if they were already punished for a similar offense, why did this happen again? Why did this case open again? Well, there was some documents that leaked unofficially, which then, of course, turned official. These documents leaked, and it showed that Manchester City was doing some shady business, just putting it nicely. They were doing very shady business, and UEFA started investigating back in March of last year. So this investigation took about a year from its official beginning to its official end. It took about a year. And UEFA said, all right, this might be way more severe than what we thought. Let's punish them in a much more severe way. And they did. 2-year ban, 2-season ban, 30 million euro fine. This is big. This is huge for soccer, not only in Manchester, not only in England, not only in Europe, but just in soccer around the world. And there's so much that can actually happen from this. But first, let me break it down region by region. if I can say. What does this mean for Manchester City? What does this ban and fine mean for Manchester City? Well, I mean, it means that they're 30 million euros poorer now. Should they pay this fine? They still don't pay it, and they still don't serve the ban because they are going to appeal. And that might take a few more months. It has to happen, of course, before next season. But this means, should the ban stand, Manchester City cannot play Champions League because that's what they've been playing. They haven't played Europa League in a long time. But they won't be playing Champions League in the 2020-2021 season and in the 2021-2022 season. They will not be eligible to play any European competition. They can still play this season. They can win it. It's very possible. They can definitely win it. But if they win it, they will not be able to play the UEFA Super Cup in August. So then that means that the runner-up would have to play the Super Cup against the winner of the Europa League. I mean, this is pretty simple stuff. And of course, when you don't play in the Champions League, you don't get the revenue that that teams that play and get very deep into the competition, you don't get the money that those teams do. So let's just say, for example, the winner of this past Champions League, which was Liverpool, there's no official amount that they got, but there's a lot of speculation, a lot of rumor, of course, a lot of unofficial amounts say that they got about a 9-figure check for winning the tournament. You surely get an 8-figure check should you advance to the round of 16. Surely you get an 8-figure check from UEFA. So now Manchester City's not going to have that money coming in, which is huge because if you look at the players that they have on their payroll, these guys earn a lot of money, a whole lot of money. And a lot of that money comes from playing UEFA's competitions. Of course, being in the Premier League is pretty nice too because you get a good deal from the broadcast rights and from the sponsors, which are very big sponsors. Of course, they have a massive bank that has been sponsoring this league for many years. But you still want that UEFA revenue. You always do. It doesn't hurt anyone. And that's what attracts so many players to Manchester City, because of how good the wages are, how big the wages are that they offer. So now that there's not going to be any UEFA revenue coming in, this probably means for Manchester City that a lot of these players are going to have to either take a pay cut or they're going to have to go somewhere else. And if we're being honest, most of these players are there for the money, which there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I want to do a job where I get paid, where I get compensated. Who doesn't? But at the same time, Manchester City's not going to have that attraction, that appeal to bring in players. So it's going to hurt their stock. It's going to hurt their brand. Which is huge because they were beginning to establish themselves as a powerhouse in England. They already were. Let me rephrase this. They were trying to establish themselves as a powerhouse in Europe. They were already a powerhouse in England. Now, speaking of England, what does this mean for the Premier League, at least for these next 2 years? If the ban does stand, this means that 5th place, whoever finishes 5th place this season in the Premier League will play Champions League next season. Wasn't the case last season or the season before or ever. 5th place never goes to the Champions League directly. Sheffield United was in 5th place. They can make it to the Champions League should they finish in 5th place, which is very possible. They can make it to the Champions League next season if this ban against Manchester City stands. What else does this mean for the Premier League? This means that Liverpool's going to have one less threat to the title. Manchester City, as strong as they have been this season, They have still been strong. The amount of points that they have racked up this season on any other season would probably have them in first place. But this season, the 2019-2020 season, it's been Liverpool's for the taking. They haven't lost a game. Hell, they've won every single game but one. Liverpool will have one less threat moving forward. If they have been winning, if they're 5 wins away from winning the Premier League now, I don't even want to imagine what it's going to be like should Manchester City not be a threat for these next couple of years. It's going to be that much more easy for Liverpool to walk through the entire Premier League. And of course, for the Premier League, this could mean that there's going to be significantly less people watching Manchester City games, which plays with their ratings and the attraction and the appeal and all of that stuff. But that's a little bit more of their business. Now, what does this mean for European football as a whole? Well, it's similar to the Premier League. There's one less powerhouse in Europe. There's one less candidate to win the Champions League. Manchester City was one of the favorites, at least betting-wise, to win the Champions League this season. And now if this ban stands, Manchester City won't even be eligible to play, which means that there's going to be an extra spot for another one of these teams to come in and potentially win the Champions League. But more importantly, we just talked about the competitive side, the competition side of all of this. What this means for European football as a whole is that this is a warning. This, to me, is a warning for every other team. I'm talking about PSG. I'm talking about Real Madrid. I'm talking about Barcelona and Juventus. I'm talking about those teams that spend big. And sometimes we see the fees that they pay for these players, and we're like, where the hell do they get all this money? That's going to open up the eyes to a lot of these UEFA officials who, by the way, I'm just going to say it. They're as dirty and as corrupt as the FIFA guys were 5-6 years ago, as they've always been. All these guys are just dirty and corrupt. Just putting it out there. It's simple. If you don't want to see it, you're just naive. I'm sorry, but that's how it is. Except that some people know how to do it right and others are a little bit dumber. They don't know how to get away with it. But still, those teams that I mentioned, and maybe more teams who might not spend as big as PSG and Real Madrid and Barca do, but they still spend more than what they make, they're going to be on the radar. And the smaller teams have less of an opportunity to get away with this because they might not have the brand, the appeal, the exposure that these big teams have. But me personally, now going into my opinion, me personally, I think that there's way more to this. Way more to this than just Manchester City spent a little bit more than what they made, and they breached into the 19th article of the fair play rules. I wipe my ass with those rules, all right? Everyone does. They all do. They all do. There's way more to this. Someone in Manchester City, one of the officials from Manchester City, said something that pissed off an official from UEFA, and they're like, all right, I don't like what they said. Let's punish them. Yeah, that's how we're going to get them back. I feel like that's along the line. Though I'm going more towards that than an actual breaking of the rules that occurred. There's so much more. We don't know about it. We won't know. Stuff is going to come out as time goes on. But as of right now, all we know is that Manchester City has been banned from playing Champions League, Europa League, UEFA Super Cup for the next 2 seasons. And this is massive. This is huge. And it's going to be so interesting to see how this plays out. Because UEFA, I'm looking at you. You could be setting a precedent for all of these other teams. You could be setting an example. and showing everyone that if you break UEFA rules, quote unquote, if you break our rules, you have to pay.